What up, nerds? Welcome to another erotic episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we kill, slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name's Bob. I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode number 316, recorded Monday, April 26th, 2021. Tonight we're going to be talking about another Patreon pick. This one was chosen by none other than Kelvin. The movie is called Dressed to Kill from 1980. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show tonight. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got our boy, Randy Gandy G. Landy. What's up, Randy?
How's it going, buddy?
What's up? How's life? How are things?
Oh my God, things are nuts. I just did another goddamn move, so I am about as tired as I've been for the last year, and it's going to be real low energy for me today. Low effort, low energy, shitty recording. It's going to be great.
Great. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah. I'm so happy to bring the heat for you guys.
Things are nuts. Next up, calling in from Jacksonville, Florida, we got our boy Soju. What's up, man?
What up? It's your boy M. Cain Stains. Get over her, blurb.
I'm right next to you. I can't get much closer to you. You're welcome.
What up?
You could get closer.
MK Stains. It sounded like you said M. Cain Stains.
I did. M. Cain Stains.
M. M.
M. Cain Stains.
As in Michael Cain?
Gotcha.
As in...
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. You really got to.
I'm just proud of you for not going for the bad impression. I'm really proud.
Michael Cain. Oh, man. Last but not least, joining us for the very first time, hailing all the way from Colorado, our good friend Tin. Welcome, Tin. What's up?
Hey, what's up? Hanging out in the Mile High City, chilling.
Thanks so much for joining us. It's no mystery to anybody that listens to this show that we're good friends with everybody over at Something Ghoulish, and
Ghoulish Media these days, Bob.
Ghoulish Media. Right. I apologize, Ghoulish Media, or just simply Ghoulish as it is. Mm-hmm. You do a lot of work with Ghoulish Media, and you're also, as I understand, working on a book that is about trans representation in horror movies. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that's correct. So with Something Ghoulish, I honestly haven't done a ton of stuff quite yet. I really did a piece like last year, and Anthony's a really good friend of mine, and I'm actually working on another article for them right now. I want to do more with them, so hopefully that will continue. And my book, yeah, that's going to be out. I don't want to say too much about it because not everything's announced quite yet, but it's going to be out later this year, and it's called
3,000 pages.
Yeah, just the exact specifics. I'll tell you everything, tell all in the middle of this podcast. No, but it'll be out later this year. It's called Transploitation, and we have a page up on Twitter and everything. If anyone wants to follow it, it's Transploit Book.
Fantastic.
There you go.
But yeah, thanks so much. Obviously, you know a lot more about anything than we do, so thanks for sitting in with us. We definitely look forward to your input on this one.
Yeah.
We were sitting around like shitting 8 tons of bricks thinking, because none of us had seen this. I'm spoiler alert. None of us had seen this movie, and we had no idea what we were in for. So we're like, okay, so now we get to be the dudes kicking beehives all day long like assholes. Like, what the fuck are we thinking?
No.
Kelvin, our good friend and Patreon subscriber who's requested this movie, you really stuck it to us with this one. Really backed us into the corner.
Fucking Kelvin. No, thanks, man. Of course. Thanks for all the love.
We love you.
Yeah, just fucking with you. Before we get into the main event, let us tackle a little bit of housekeeping real quick. Here is your final reminder, actually, that our May poll pick is currently posted on our Patreon website. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you get the chance to vote on a movie we're going to be talking about this May. The theme for May is alternative aliens, and the 3 movies to vote between are Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Mac and Me, and Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Bob?
Juice.
How are those numbers looking so far?
Pretty much the same. Killer Clowns is handily winning, and then we got Rocky Horror in second place, and Mac and Me only has a couple votes.
Now, Bob, this was your takeover month for the poll pick.
Domination.
And are you pleased with how the numbers are coming out so far?
Yeah, I'd be pleased regardless of what won because I chose all 3.
Yes, I would hope so.
I am pleased.
Good.
You have Zin in this category?
I do, indeed. It's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
For
and
Bob.
you have about one more week to vote, I guess. if somehow there's going to be an upset, which I don't think there is.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be the case. But make sure you get all your votes in by the end of April. We'll see what movie we're talking about this May. In other housekeeping news, we got a brand new Patreon supporter we got to give some mad shouts outs to. Cole K, thanks for signing up on Patreon and showing us some love. Every dollar you guys contribute goes right back into the show. And as is tradition around these parts, we owe Cole the straight chilling salute. This one is for Cole.
Slap me in the ass.
Thanks for that hearty ass slap.
Thanks
Cole.
for the ass slap, Cole.
King Cole, appreciate it. I'm sure you have never, ever heard such a correlation in your life.
For sure. In other news, thanks to everybody that hung out with us this past Friday for our Joe Bob live watch party. He showed Audition for the first film.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, it was solid. Second film was Class of 1984, also solid.
Okay.
We had a decent squad show up. Again, that's something that we're going to be doing every Friday until season 3 concludes. I think there's going to be another 7 or 8 weeks worth. So if you want to sit in and watch some Joe Bob and chat along with the rest of the gang, we do that every Friday on Zoom. I'll post a link to join on the live watch just before showtime every Friday. The only other thing I got...
bedazzled. I am prepared to be bedazzled for 7 more weeks.
7 weeks, and then I'll be done
And
with
then
the
I'm
bedazzling.
not being bedazzled anymore.
Bezazzle out for the year.
The only other bit of housekeeping I have is another reminder. Juice and I are going to be hanging out at Spooky Empire in Orlando on Saturday, May 1st. If anybody's down there chilling, you want to talk horror movies and get nerdy and weird with us, hit us up. We will be there in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, in Orlando. Come hang out with us. Take some pics. Talk some horror flicks.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't have to
So
take pictures.
presumptuous to think people would want photos of the event.
Really?
Take some pics of yourself, not of me.
Yeah.
He's not just a disembodied voice.
Can't take pictures of that. Juice, do you have anything else? Is that it?
No. My house is clean this week.
All right. Sounds like our houses are collectively clean.
This house is clean.
Without further ado, let's talk about the main event. Dressed to Kill. We're kicking it off with the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
Bob,
Juice.
you got this box. Is that correct?
Yeah, Criterion put this out, and I did pick it up specifically for this episode.
Do you need help reading the back of the box this week?
No, this is a nice black...
Did you bring your reading glasses?
I can't take them off because I can't function.
Old man.
It's a nice
Pretty important.
black slip cover there with white text, so I can read it. Okay.
Bob, that
So you're
doesn't
fucked,
look like
basically.
Steel to me.
Yeah, Dressed to Kill from 1980. This was written and directed by Brian De Palma, starring Michal Cain, Angie Dickinson, Nancy Allen, some other folks. Plot synopsis is as follows. Brian De Palma is sent to the this is all right, Criterion, going on and on about Brian De Palma. At once tongue-in-cheek and scary as hell, Dressed to Kill revolves around the grisly murder of a woman in Manhattan and how her psychiatrist, her brainiac teenage son, and the prostitute who witnessed the crime try to piece together what happened while the killer remains at large. With its masterfully executed scenes of horror, voluptuous camera work, and passionate score, Dressed to Kill is a veritable symphony of terror enhanced by vivid performances by Angie Dickinson, Michal Cain, and Nancy Allen. Voluptuous camera work.
Yeah, some interesting choices there. Tongue in cheek seems I don't get that from this movie, but I guess
Yeah. Before we get into it, have we seen this movie before, and would we recommend people check it out? Tin, you're our guest of honor. Would you please kick us off?
Sure. I have seen this movie probably 10 times. I've seen this movie a lot of times. Would I recommend it to other people to watch? That is a very hard question. I think it depends on the person. Probably not like a kid, or all due respect, I don't think I would probably tell just an unknowing cis person, oh, you should definitely go and watch this with no knowledge of trans people or characters.
hey, here we are. We're right here.
Yeah, it's definitely what is going on, especially the later half, which I'll talk about later. But I've seen it quite a few times, and I guess it depends on who you are if I would recommend it to you.
Gotcha, for sure. Randy, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, like I spoiled earlier, first time for me, I had no fucking clue what I was in for with this movie. I would not generally recommend this movie. I wouldn't feel very like comfortable in myself recommending this movie. Like outside of like an academic setting, maybe I feel like this occupies a space where that might be acceptable, but I don't know, man. Yeah, like Tin was saying, I don't think this is one that you just say, oh yeah, you want to throw something on? I got a great film for you. It's called Dress to Kill. Are you ready to be very uncomfortable?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I feel you there. Juice, what about you?
I had never seen this before. This is from 1980, and that's not particularly like my favorite time era of films, like late 70s, early 80s. And so, I mean, obviously it was directed by Brian De Palma, who's done some heavy hitters, so I could see somebody who respects his filmmaking ability and is maybe a completist in some way, and that way it would kind of make sense. For me, it was just kind of very much of its time, even with its filmmaking style, and I don't think I'd sway anybody in particular from watching it, like especially like horror fans, but I don't think I would go out of my way to recommend it either. So kind of just like a wash, I guess. Like maybe not, but somewhere kind of in the middle. General recommend, maybe, I guess.
Glowing recommend from Soju.
Must watch from Soju. Bob, had you seen this movie before? Would you recommend?
First time watch for me. I've had limited experience watching De Palma films. I've seen Carrie a couple times, Phantom of the Paradise. That's really about it, though. So when putting Dress to Kill on, I didn't really know what I was getting into. It instantly reminded me a lot of Psycho and a lot of Giallo movies from Italy. So I thought it was cool to like see those influences, specifically in like his camera work and his lighting and like some tropes here and there. Didn't love the finished product though. Don't know that I would necessarily recommend anybody go out of their way to watch this. But I probably wouldn't like deter anyone from watching it either. I think if you just really wanted to see like an American Giallo, like maybe throw it on, but I think the Italian stuff's better anyways. So light recommend, I think, as well. That's a big, watch it, I guess, if you want to, from the crew. I don't know if you want to.
Do what you want.
Do what you want to.
That's our recommend. Do whatever the fuck you want.
Let's go and drop that spoiler warning, and then we'll get into the rest of the movie. Here we go.
Spoiler warning.
Bob,
yo,
did you type up a plot synopsis this week?
You know I did. You watched me do it.
All right, hit me with that plot synopsis.
All
son.
right. Real quick, here's the full plot. All right, Kate Miller is having some marital issues and finds having sex with her husband to be unsatisfying. We know this because she says as much to her psychiatrist, Dr. Elliot. Kate propositions Dr. Elliot for sex, and he declines. Kate then goes to a museum where she encounters an attractive stranger. They end up going back to his apartment, and they have sex. As Kate's leaving the apartment, she is murdered in the elevator. We then meet Liz Blake, who was a prostitute, and she ends up witnessing the murder, and she's questioned by the police thereafter. Peter Miller, who is Kate's son, teams up with Liz to try and find the killer. As they look into the case, we see Dr. Elliot receive several concerning phone calls from the killer, stating she's found a new psychiatrist that will sign off on her gender-affirming surgery. She also says she stole Dr. Elliot's straight razor and is using it as the murder weapon. The movie eventually concludes with Liz attempting to seduce Dr. Elliot to gain access to his client information. After she finds the killer's name and address, Dr. Elliot, dressed as a woman, attempts to murder Liz. However, Dr. Elliot is gunned down by a police officer. The movie ends with a dream sequence of Liz's throat being sliced in her bathroom. That's pretty much the rough and tumble of it.
So
anyways.
wait, so did Michael Cain survive or no? He died. You said he was gunned down. I thought he survived.
He is gunned down. I don't think he dies.
They don't actually say whether or not he dies because the whole last bit of the film is actually a dream sequence. Like arguably the entire portion of the film. I don't actually recall if they say whether or not.
Huh.
Well, they did the whole like unnecessary psycho breakdown at the end. Is that's after the shooting, right? So
that is after the shooting.
I think that she survived.
I think.
But I think the dream is like a discrete portion. That's
that's fair. That's fair. That's possible. I should have. Yeah, I should have thought about that.
Well, the dream is the very last thing you see, like the arm reaching through the medicine cabinet and slicing her throat. That's like
no, it's not because she wakes up.
Oh,
and then she's screaming. No, the lunch was before the dream.
The lunch was before the dream.
That's
but the last shot is them crying, or is just her crying in bed with Peter.
Yeah. But that whole bit was a dream with the, like, as far as I'm concerned, like the whole thing with like Bobby being in the psychiatric hospital and killing the nurse. And like, I kind of feel like that was all part of her dream.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
That whole thing, like, man, that whole ending is so like, it seems like the movie kind of protracted at the point of like, it should have probably ended right after the shooting. I feel like
I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Kept going into really murkier and murkier territory. And then eventually just kind of like thuds out.
One of those things they have to end it with like one last quote jump scare, so to speak. So here's a little more blood for you.
Well, Pieces did it better. Carrie did it better. We were good with those.
It was the old bag of tricks, the De Palma bag.
Yeah. Well, my question actually is, which Psycho remake is better, this one or the Vince Vaughn one? I'm just kidding.
I wondered that exact thing, and I think that it has to be this one because that other one is nothing. It is fucking nothing. Unless you are interested in seeing what it'd be like if Psycho featured a Walkman prominently. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Vince Vaughn's giggle in that movie it's terrible. I can't deal with it.
I have such an axe to grind with that fucking movie. Anyway,
y'all have bitched about that movie a ton, especially
it's
lately.
an art school project that people paid full price to see.
I'm glad I brought it up.
Yeah, I'm glad too because I would have forgotten.
Going.
Yeah, but. So where do we begin with this fucking movie? Because obviously this goes into some territory that's extremely touchy and extremely fucked up on a level that I don't think that people understood at that time, or at least not widely. So we go deep into into transgender territory, which none of us are, have the lived experience to talk about too much except for 10. So, I mean, I was sitting there with thinking that this movie, especially with the beginning, the first part with Kate, like that whole scene, that fucking scene at the Met was fucking awesome. Like, most amazing scenes I've ever seen.
Fantastic. I mean, I don't know how long it is off the top of my head, but the no dialogue almost at all for the entire scene. And even by the time she goes back to his apartment and everything, like, she only said one word when she's in a cab. She was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry about earlier." And then that was it. And then there's a whole nother sequence where she's at his house and she's there and she reads the paper and goes in the elevator. I mean, there's no dialogue from her, like that entire portion of the film.
She conveys so much.
The specific museum scene with no dialogue itself is around 10 minutes. And you're right that there's minimal dialogue, like maybe with the cab driver, but up until she gets murdered, it's well past the 20-minute mark. So you have a large portion of this film that's no dialogue, that's very musically driven. And actually, one thing I was going to praise about this film, I really liked the music choices. I thought that they created some real genuine tension, especially in those moments. But then towards the end, I mean, throughout the whole film, I appreciated kind of the musical score of it, but it was certainly most notable in that first section where there is no dialogue, because it has to kind of drive this chase that's at first seems like it could be playful. It gets like more and more sketchy, and then it leads to the situation. Even then, it's kind of driving the kind of tone that's going on when she's in the apartment. I thought that portion was really well done from like a cinematic and like soundtrack standpoint.
For sure.
I love the music. Yeah,
the music choice. So, like, that whole scene is like, I really want to like just take that scene, everything from like, I would say even including her visit to Michael Caine's office, where she discusses what she's feeling. It kind of gives you the groundwork for the following scene. I think from that point on makes a stellar short film in and of itself. Like you could excise that from the movie and just make it an amazing short film, period. But
that's true,
all the way up until like maybe just before she gets murdered, because otherwise that's just like a whole thing. that obviously is an inciting incident.
The horrors of venereal diseases.
What the fuck was even the point of that? That's the thing that I was like.
I was confused by that as well. I don't want to bring it up now because I want to get into more discussion. I have not even like a well-developed theory from me, but like something I want to present where I feel like maybe that has significance if I'm trying to give this movie a little more credit than maybe it deserves. I do want to present it and like so we can have a discussion about it, but it possibly maybe could have a little significance.
Possibly, maybe. Got it.
Possibly, maybe.
Yeah,
wrote that in my notes.
We're at the Oasis.
This is going to be the most committal episode of our show.
Yeah. Everyone's like, yeah, I liked it, sort of.
I mean, it's very much in keeping with the dual personality like fixation that this movie has.
Oh my gosh.
I was watching a bonus feature on this Criterion disc. It's got some decent bonus features on here. One of them was an interview with Brian De Palma specifically. And they touch on like the trans representation in this movie just momentarily. They don't really linger on it too much in the interview.
I'm not surprised.
I wish they would have, because explain what your thought process.
It's so central.
Like the primary character in this. But like he spoke very briefly on it, and one thing that he did mention was like Michael Caine's character. He wanted to sort of like play with the idea of making that character a like Jekyll and Hyde figure, which is obviously incorrect in every way. It's you just like truly don't understand what being trans is, or what Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde really is in any way. Like the whole thing is just sort of misunderstood and jumbled. I don't know if you had read anything about that, Tin, or perhaps even watched that interview, but I thought that was just very misled by him.
No, I haven't read that, but I mean, I think like using DID as a trope in horror is so common, and it's also kind of I was nervous actually. Before I say this, I want to interrupt myself and say I was a little bit nervous talking about this movie because I actually wrote an entire article about this film that I never put out because I was worried because I thought I was kind of mean and I just I never put it out, but I really don't like the whole like DID thing, the way that they talk about it, and I'm sure that they more commonly refer to it as multiple personality disorder, which is just not what it actually is. I think it's just very villainizing for mental like identity disorders in general, and I think that on top of like the trans association and the fact that they're just kind of combining them into one ball, like, oh yeah, well, like one of the multiple personalities of this serial killer is a woman and one of them's a man and they don't get along, and that's the whole premise, is like they're gonna kill because one of them wants to be a girl and one of them doesn't. That's like, and it's all sexual and it's all very hetero, and I don't love that. I didn't see the interview though, so I'm surprised they don't talk about it more, because it's like all I want to talk about sometimes when I think of this movie.
The thing about that is that it seems like that conflation of dissociative identity disorder. That's what that stands for, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I always get the first word wrong, I feel like. But yeah, the conflation of that with transgenderism is like this thing. I mean, obviously, this movie is a, like you said, is a remake of Psycho, and it takes those same sort of approaches. But the difference here is that this movie has the benefit of 20 extra years of, some of representation and a director that's, as I understand it anyway, pretty known for doing his research, to the point where he included that Donahue interview in this fucking movie, which was like strange. Which was like, oh wow, like Phil Donahue's killing it right now.
No, but that's the thing is, it's like a very iconic moment that they chose to put in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had never seen that interview, and I was like, wow, okay, so maybe I'm just not getting what De Palma's going for here, and that was swiftly thrown out of the window because I was the dum-dum who did not see the twist coming.
Oh, the Robert Bobby twist.
Yeah, I thought that it was a transgender patient, and that was enough, on its own.
Right, yeah.
And then by the end, I was even still questioning at the end, where I was like, okay, so because it was a blonde woman on the other side of glass that shoots him at the end. I thought that maybe that was Bobby, and Bobby was actually trying to prevent Dr. Elliot from like maybe they were like a couple in some way or something, or had some sort of other unspoken history. But of course not. No, it was me trying way too hard to forgive this movie for its sins.
Well, and that was one of the frustrating things that made this movie a little talk about. We were trying to talk about it before the cast, after we watched the movie and stuff like that. Is attaching it to the kind of mumbo jumbo-ish, like out of science of like, oh, this person wants to take over and because of this, and it makes it so hard to, even if you want to get in a deeper dive and start to pick apart, it seems like there's always this roadblock that kind of cuts you off, because it ultimately ends to this like crash where like, well, shit, I mean, no matter how you try to pick this apart, it ends in that thing, and it's it's so detached from reality that it makes it difficult to kind of start to discuss some of these things in any real, like, what were they thinking, or like what was any kind of intention, because once you hit that roadblock, it just kind of stops you there. You're like, well, shit.
Yeah, it really does. Like, for me, it was like, I could only think about that. And it's not hard to understand why, because like the transgender aspect of this movie is 1000% central to every aspect of the movie. Like the fear of the other and all that stuff. Like that is the quote unquote monster of this film, is, the sexual deviation that's going on with this person, but it's really somebody who just murders people because they're a murderer. And it's tough to focus on that.
And I think a lot of people don't talk about how it's almost like, in a way, it's sort of homophobic in a way as well, because if you think about the inspiration behind the killers, according to the psychiatrist at the end, the inspiration behind the killers was that as soon as the doctor became sexually aroused by a woman and I'm saying this in quotes, in a masculine way, then that was when it suddenly had to be, like now Bobby is upset because you can't be turned on in a masculine way because we're supposed to be feminine, and we can't be attracted to women, which makes it like, okay, well, why can't a girl be attracted to a girl? And then we're going to also talk about body autonomy. We're going to get into like, okay, well, why can't a woman have a penis and be, and get into that kind of thing. There's like so much when you start to look at it deep. It's like, what was the thought process behind any of that character like build at all? It's just very, very much not
it's just
there.
Pure schlocky, like shock value for what was shocking to people who didn't understand what the fuck they were doing. But
absolutely,
that's a great segue into actually maybe what I want to present about something I thought about after the fact. And I was like, I feel like I'm definitely maybe lifting some of the heavy weights of trying to give this movie a little bit too much more credit than it deserves, but something I wanted to present for at least to consider, because it ties into exactly what you just said, Tin. So how this movie is set up and the way the character is structured in the beginning, and like why some of these finer details could potentially matter. So the idea that I kind of thought once I try to chew on this film a little bit, like, why did they make some of these decisions really? So in the beginning we have this woman, and the first scene that we see is she is having a dream, but in the dreams she's sexually fantasizing about, I think, her husband, but a man. And as a result of that, it turns into this like dangerous thing where she's essentially like getting raped in the shower. She wakes up, and what we get from that, then the next thing is she is going to see the doctor, and she's telling him that she is not happy with her husband sexually. So we have this point of sexual frustration and how it is starting to manifest like bad results, because he essentially comes out and says, you need to tell your husband the truth. And she's like, what? Tell me he's bad. And he's like, yes. So we see that this sexual repression is actually creating some poor results in her mind. And then it ultimately, if you want to strip it down, is like, when you let these sexual frustrations build, when you're not honest about them, they lead to bad results. Because ultimately what happens to her is she does kind of put herself in this dangerous situation. And I think why the venereal disease is particularly important is because at first she's happy, but then it has these kind of like consequences. Like, oh, if you were just honest with your husband about it, maybe you wouldn't end up with a venereal disease. In a very basic standpoint.
It definitely punishes her.
Yeah,
for
then
seemingly no reason to me, but go on.
Then why I think that could be important. Right in the middle then of this movie, so we have that first setup of this idea of sexual frustration and kind of what it can cause mentally. Then we have the interview where they watch on the television, and the last, or maybe the last line that's delivered is like, well, heterosexuality had nothing to do with it. So almost detaching the trans identity from the idea of sexual frustration. Like her saying, like, no, like that had nothing to do with my choice. Like that wasn't even something I consider. Like, so that them specifically making that point to detach the sexuality from it through that interview. And then on the back half of the movie, we kind of have this same thing where we have somebody who, okay, even if we're saying, and we don't even know because they don't take the time or the proper, they don't tell us whether the doctor is actually trans or not, like what's going on, but they do pinpoint it to a sexual frustration, because we've already seen in this interview, like, oh, he could have just been, a woman and still had sex with women. Like that's no problem according to the interview that we're given. And so it almost is a way, I thought, potentially at the beginning of this movie to set up this idea of the sexual frustration and to give that like almost as an excuse for the doctor. Like, no, it wasn't because he was trans. It was because he wasn't honest about this sexual frustration.
So being punished for not being forthright with your own desires.
With your own sexual desires. Exactly.
Maybe. I mean, to me, I had a weird experience with this movie in general. Not to veer too far off of that, because I do want to comment on that. But my experience watching this movie, because, Angie Dickinson was so goddamn powerful in those scenes. She wakes up to marital rape. She then goes to a doctor and is told, you need to be honest about this. But instead, she starts indulging in the cat and mouse of a potential promiscuous experience, which in my mind, at the forefront of that scene, at the beginning of that Met scene, you see her look over at one guy grabbing a woman's ass, which she clearly doesn't want. And then, several examples of men being fucking assholes. And I'm sitting here thinking, maybe this movie is pretty and again, at this point, had no idea what this movie was. Maybe this movie is far more progressive than I would give the year 1980 credit for a horror movie. That ship sank, obviously. But at the time, I had this thing. I was like, man, this seems like it's kind of got an edge of feminism to it, or what would feminism might be considered by a dude making a movie in 1980, what could pass in his mind as feminism. So, I mean, when we got to the parts where it was like, oh no, there's a transgender person that's the center of the killings, that's the murderer, and they're otherizing these people and all this stuff, it brought that whole thing crashing down for me. I was like, what is this? It almost had this turfy vibe to me, where it was like, oh, women are in danger from men faking womanhood and all this shit. And it's like, this is not where I expected this to go. I was so much ready for a more reasonable point of view than what this movie is getting me. And I was just having a mental collapse halfway through this movie. So I didn't really see I saw that the syphilis gonorrhea revelation as this completely unnecessary byway towards the beginning of just oh, okay, well, I guess there are maybe consequences to being promiscuous. Maybe they're trying to comment on that too. But yeah, if what you're saying holds true, then it's not better, really, to me. It's still kind of the same issue of people being punished for pursuing their sexuality, or at least in her case. And then later on, she's just kind of fodder to have that happen to her so that this person can be the other that you need for a monster movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I don't know if that makes sense. I'm kind of shooting from the hip.
Well, and I felt even if that was the intention, had they cut, of course, the whole lunch scene, the whole scene, and delivered it maybe when she's back at the police department of oh, it wasn't because he was trans, it was so more mentally based. And I was okay, maybe they could have earn some faith back. Obviously, they didn't do that, so no matter what, it's ruined. I just thought it was a curious idea that popped into my mind for potential of trying to set something like that up.
I mean, I was looking too, Lord knows. I wanted this movie to not be something that I had to feel bad about watching on some level. But yeah.
I always kind of looked at this as like, I feel like De Palma was like having some kind of weird, fucked up, like wet dream nightmare. I mean, he opens up with this shower scene where he has the stand-in shower so you can see her nude. It's like someone way younger than her, it looks like. And then then it goes into like immediately like an actual rape scene, and she wakes up to that. And then there's the therapy, and then there's the weird museum, and the crazy like, oh, we're gonna have sex in a cab, and the whole thing's very, very like sexual, but like in a really dark way. And then even like as the like kind of like whole thing plays out in the end, where they base it all around sexuality and everything, and it would almost make me look to De Palma like, oh, like what were you thinking about when you were writing this? Like, do you like fantasize about these things? Do you want to like, wear women's clothes? Do you like think that like these things are actually like positive, and you're afraid of venereal diseases, you're afraid of this? Like, are these your internal repercussions that you have for your sexual quote deviances that you may find, not to be pure or right? I don't know. It's just kind of like a very dark, like look at all of those things, I think, which, I mean, it's a horror film, in the end. Yeah. So you want that, but it's definitely intriguing.
I just feel like this movie is so slavishly trying to be Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho that it walks ass frontwards into the fucking trap of making the same goddamn mistakes. But it's hard to say that it's just that, because I mean, from what I don't know. Like I said, there's a bunch of years and a bunch of research that could have easily, precluded that or made it differently. Like even fucking like if you look at like Silence of the Lambs and all the transphobic shit that goes on in that, you at least have somebody saying, well, Buffalo Bill's not a real transgender. He's, transgender people are X, Y, and Z, and they say a bunch of crazy shit. But at least they do pay the lip service to not otherizing, even as they do. This movie doesn't even attempt that, and it had the opportunity. It had the prime opportunity to correct Psycho's mistake of saying like, yes, psychopathy and transgenderism are the same. See, and this is what happens. Like, it just chose not to. It's hard to like, you can't really look past that exactly. I had a hard time looking past it.
Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of things I do love about this film. Now that I've said some of the things that I dislike about its representation, when I actually watch the film, I mean, there's we already talked about the museum scene. There's like a ton of really gorgeous those side-by-side shots. Okay, so I love the beautiful like side-by-side shots that they do, where they have like the double focus, where you can see someone in the like foreground and the background at the same time, and they reuse that shot. I mean, a lot of times in the film, I'll admit, but I still find it interesting every time I see it. I also really like the wow, I'm sorry, guys, I apologize. I lost my train of thought when we stopped. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh no, it's okay.
That is not your fault.
So like the specific shot you're talking about, is it kind of like the one where we see Michal Cain and you can see the back of his head, but then he's like, his face is in the mirror, like a shot like that?
Okay, so I was actually saying that I like the cinematography. I really like if you go like to the police station scene, there's shots where like you're inside of the interrogation space, and you can see Dr. Elliot, and like Dr. Elliot's in the front, and then in the background you can see like Liz Blake, and then it flips around and you can see Peter sitting outside of the interrogation room, and you can see Detective Marino like in the background, and they're all in focus at the same time. And they repeat that shot a lot. And then almost as a callback to their shots, because because De Palma loves them so much, he also does flashbacks during the non-dialogue scenes, where like it'll show Kate's face on one half, and it'll flash like her underwear falling in the cab on the other half. Mm-hmm. Like they do a lot of like split screen like kind of things where there's two things happening at once, which I think for me kind of felt like a calling to the entire theme of the film, which is the two personalities or the two people or the two genders or whatever that they try and separate in the film, which I don't necessarily agree with all of it, you know, in that sense. But cinematography in general is really, really gorgeous in this film. I mean, I love 70s. Yeah, you know, I love yellow films, and we were talking about that earlier. And I love the 80s schlock stuff. So I love so much of what went in this movie that it's almost hard for me to like, I try really hard to like it. Sometimes I feel like I'm making myself like it more than I actually do, because I'm like, oh, I love all these. But then every time at the end, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, right. yeah, that's how it ends.
I feel that.
It's got such a beautiful craft to it. You're right. Like I haven't seen a ton of De Palma myself either, but like with Carrie, when I first saw it as a kid, you know, I see that when I saw it as a child, I was like, well, I mean, this is kind of cheesy, you know, because we had been it's outmoded way of doing things at that time. But watching it with all these like insanely capable actors and actresses, just about every actor and actress in this film, it does a great job, in my opinion, especially Angie Dickinson, because she really gets a chance to do what very few movies allow an actor to do, which is just live in a moment for so long.
Oh, yeah.
And just convey with her eyes and her body language and so forth. Like, it's tough to not like embrace a bunch of things happening when you get the opportunity to be that invested in somebody's situation. You know what I mean? So when you see like her flashing back to the panties dropping or whatever, one of those like side by sides, it carries extra weight with it. It feels like it's one of those things where it's like, it's earned. It is earned. And from a craft perspective, it's hard to like, it's very tempting to just be like, this is great. This is so great.
Yeah.
When you enter like the critical story eye, it diverges wildly from that feeling. So
something I really enjoyed about this is like almost like the choreography of it, like the way the actors and the camera sort of dance around one another, specifically in that museum scene, where it's just one long cut and we just see this long cat and mouse go down in real time in the museum. There's another sequence later on in the movie where our
Liz?
Yeah, Liz.
The subway?
You. Liz is running throughout the subway. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
There's another like cat and mouse sequence, basically, and she ends up getting on the subway, and she's running for her life, and right before she gets knifed, the kid jumps up and saves her, like, on the other side of the door on the subway, and it's just like this whole long, tense sequence that really pulls you into the film, and it's really well thought out and really well acted, and I enjoy that quite a bit in this movie.
I mean, yeah, I like the I like the craft versus story context thing, because because they also have like a really fucked up, like very racist scene in the middle of all that.
God, so
it's
much.
Just like,
what
I was like, oh my God, we're going here too? What the fuck? Like,
that was a very strange choice.
I mean,
I guess
that was a very racist choice, I think.
Yeah, but even the motivations at the time, it didn't feel logical. Apart from the racist standpoint that it takes, but her going up and leaning up against somebody randomly. Well, it just didn't even seem to aid the story anyway. I mean, it's not any better from a racist standpoint, you know, if it did make logical sense, but it's just like, why are we doing this?
And then and it made me so mad that she then goes into the subway and she tries to tell the cop, which I mean, I like the way they represented, like the way the cop was dismissive of her, but I had this thought where like when what's her name? Bobby.
No, you're good.
Bobby is like peering through the window, which those are really effective shots of just like the Stranger style, like kind of half in shot sort of moments of the monster stalking the prey and all that stuff. But like she's looking through the glass at Liz. Liz doesn't see her, but the cop is standing there where he could clearly see Bobby.
Yeah.
And instead, like, I think because he's staring at Liz, but in like the way that it's shot made me think that he was staring at the danger and being like, oh shit, what do I do? I can't, like, if she said she was being chased, if this person's really chasing her, then maybe I don't want to make a sudden move. Like, that's where my mind was going. I was like, again, giving way more benefit of the doubt to this movie. Credit.
Especially to a police officer.
Yeah, and then he just fucks off. He just fucks off. It's just like the person that saves her is fucking Peter, who is the MVP of this goddamn movie.
No doubt. He basically solves the whole crime. Although the the detective takes a lot of credit. He's like, oh, I planned the whole thing.
NYPD Blue really, really goes for the credit, doesn't he? He's the one actor in this movie that I'm not super thrilled to see, but yeah.
There was one more thing. This is kind of a personal thing that one of the reasons I have a hard time with movies, especially from this era, is the technological aspect. It's one of those things where now you kind of almost have to roll your eyes where they try to talk about technology in a way it's obvious they don't understand what the fuck they're talking about. And now it just looks so ridiculous. So that always, I mean, that's
I don't know about
struggle
that.
with so the kid himself was solid, but like his crazy computer in his room thing that he's setting up, and then all his like little gizmos and gadgets, it's okay because the kid plays it like well enough, but that's one of those things that it's almost like a pet peeve where I'm like, oh god, the 80s, they didn't know what was going on with
apparently
computers.
I don't know, man. I think that's legit.
Yeah, I think so too. De Palma, again,
that's what computers were.
Again, in some of the bonus features I was watching, De Palma, I guess, when he was like in high school, like a senior in high school or something, there was some science fair, and he built a computer. To what degree, I don't know, but he named it Peter, like the kid in the movie named his computer after himself, Peter.
That's funny.
That's where all that comes from.
Well,
but I thought it was believable enough. It's basically, he sets a camera up on a timer, you know? It's like,
yeah, that was pretty fair.
I buy into
But he
it.
also does the headphone thing with like the tape deck.
That's true, yeah.
That was James Bond shit. I don't know what was going on there. That was the most unbelievable of the science
just
parts.
a microphone.
But I loved it.
The computer didn't set me off too much.
through the wall,
set
I
the
don't know.
scene, and then the next one I think was the microphone, which I was like, okay. Then we get the computer. He kind of goes in this little spiel about how he made like self-made mace, which is fair. I mean, you know, you can make that
Instead
stuff.
of buying it.
It just like it's one of those.
Oh yeah, I
things-
forgot about that. The mace thing.
It's one of those things.
I don't know,
that kinda
sodium from Adam.
distracts me. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Fucking weird
That
way of saying
line.
that. Yeah, I don't know, man. The like sodium, sodium's the word you got hung up on.
Sodium.
Let me introduce you to table salt. Well, that whole, I don't know, man. I thought that the computer scene, I was like, that scene again with Angie Dickinson and I forget this actor's name, Keith Gordon, who was also in Christine and a few other things. Them together, like they were played off each other so well, and like it was a believably loving relationship. And on top of that, like just because I know like very little, but a little bit about, you know, early proto computers, the idea that this could be a homebrew computer that's main function is to count upwards to a certain number, like that's very believable to me. I don't know if it looks like that necessarily, but it's basically at a certain time, all computers did was make a light blink at a certain time. So I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility from my perspective. So I was kind of like engaged with that, and then that made the tape deck listening device a little easier to swallow, even though it was very James Bond and a little bit more unbelievable.
I kind of thought of it as like, you know, like I said before, I mean, giallo films are like my favorite genre, and I look at someone like Dario Argento. You think of something like 5 years prior to this, Deep Red, where like in that film, and I don't know if you've seen it, sorry if you haven't, but in that film, like they do things like, oh, like one professor's like, oh, I've heard this song before that you got a recording of with your tape deck that you heard while someone was killing somebody, and I actually know where it's from. It's from this album. And then they go and they find this album, and oh, the person who recorded this album lives in this one small countryside, and they go to this small countryside, and of course the killer already knows they're going to somehow show up in the countryside and pre-beats them to it. So it's like they're just like completely extravagant, wild, the killer like is ahead of you tropes, and the yellow tropes of just like it makes no sense at all. Like kind of for me, when I went into this film, I had already heard, this was a couple years ago, I'd already heard the comparisons to a lot of that 70s stuff. So I kind of already was like, I'm not worried about whether or not like the technology even makes sense, because I didn't even care. I was just like, fuck it. Like it makes sense in the movie. Like it works in the film. That's fine. Like, but I know what you're saying though, like the datedness of some of it.
And that's I agree to an extent where like if I hadn't been charmed by what I consider to be, it seems like De Palma at least did some research on this stuff. Like if I hadn't had that thought, I still would have I would have had the same reaction as you, Ten. I would have been like, yeah, but I mean,
whatever. I don't know.
These characters are strong enough and are acting their asses off, and I just don't really care about some of the minor nitty gritty at that point. The believability of technology. Much more of like a pet peeve for me. That's something that always sticks out in just films around this era where it was like, I remember laughing about The Fly with that.
Oh wow.
One of my favorite, like, crazy, like, sci-fi misinterpretations of the future, with the Siri computer that's able to, like,
Cronenberg's
have opinions.
Pretty bad with that kind of thing. Like with scanners, some of the with the phone nonsense.
Somebody online said called Scanners and a secret X-Men movie recently, and I can't stop thinking about that.
I like that.
Is it a secret? I thought it was. Yeah, is that a secret? I thought it was.
It was to me. I was like, oh fuck. Professor X has a dark past. We all know this.
Oh my god.
But yeah, anyway, I'm sorry, that was a diversion. But yeah, I don't know. Like some of the nitty gritty stuff, it does kind of like, I can see why that would trouble you or whatever, or get in your craw. But I was so charmed by the acting at that point that I was just kind of full on in. I was like, I'm so excited to see the rest of this movie. There's some weird stuff going on, but I feel like it's going to be justified later based on how much care is being put into how these characters are acting. And of course, the blow up happened, and I was like, well, this is not what I expected. So
one scene I want to call out, I know this is kind of random, it just popped in my head, but one scene I want to call out is there's a scene, and we talked about it a few times, where they go out to like dinner together, and it's got Liz and Peter, and they're sitting out together, and Peter's like, wow, what does it mean? I thought Dr. Elliot just put on a wig and a dress. And then Liz is suddenly obviously an expert after having one conversation with a therapist about it, and Michael, or whoever, So she's like, okay, well, let me just explain to you all about how this happens. So that scene, if you are unknowledgeable about it and you're like, don't even know a trans person, and you're just like, I don't even know what this means. You're watching that and you're like, what the fuck is this detailed description of, of like genital, almost it's played up as genital mutilation rather than like actual like surgical procedure, even though like they're describing it like that. It's very much played up. But if you watch it as someone who already knows about that, and you kind of think of it like, I've heard people say that part is almost like parody, almost funny, because there's a girl in the background during that scene at the other table, and Liz's character is like, they cut open the penis, and she's like, what? Oh my god! What?
You did?
In the background. Yeah,
I don't know.
There's
She's like getting sick.
There's like a woman like facing each other, and there's an extra woman like sitting on the side, and she's
I may have been like,
she's like listening
down and just missed the reaction.
That's so funny.
That woman is the sole reason that scene was palatable for me. It's like, having those thoughts. It's like, what? Why would they do this? But
why is this?
I'm like, well, okay.
But I love her sudden expertise, and like how so like I said, it was just like a parody, because as a trans person, I feel like I always have some people like, oh yeah, well, like obviously this is the trans thing, and I'm like, what? Like, how do you even decide for me what is and isn't like something? And so like, oh, aren't you gonna have, and also like the obsession with genitals, aren't you gonna have like, like he's gonna have surgery or whatever? Like obviously that makes sense. That's the path that like she was going down. Like it's just so ridiculous to me. Like there's so many non-surgical trans people, so it's just like, to look at it from a parody standpoint, it's funny. But if you're uneducated and you're watching it, you're gonna actually think that what they're saying is like totally accurate, and that's like pretty harmful.
Right, and that's the point, right? Because like at that point, that's the thing, that and the everything, like I said, everything that happens after the shooting is just so much like pressing the pressure point as hard as fucking possible. And it's like, there's no reason for this. This adds nothing to the movie if you even take that like the offensive qualities out of the context. If you can strip that away, you look at it and it's like, but what purpose does this fucking serve except to make a funny little scene for this little old lady behind her?
It's crazy. I also like the part where the dream sequence that's after that as well, because we all kind of agreed, I think, that the whole ending portion kind of could have been left out of the film almost. But there's like that dream sequence with the in the mental hospital or whatever, where Bobby like kills the nurse, and then it's like the shots from above, and Bobby's like dancing and opening up the clothes of the woman, and all the people in the asylum are like cheering, like, yeah, kill her. Like,
it's like a surgical auditorium.
It's so weird. And they're like on a second floor, and like the camera pans upward, and like that shot insane and awesome, out of context, but what? It makes no sense. And then what? She put on the nurse's uniform and escaped the asylum totally unharmed in the nurse's uniform. It just makes no sense. But I mean, I know it's a dream, but it's just like, what?
Actually, that is something I wanted to bring up too, though. And even outside of the dream sequences, though, there's some things in this movie that just don't make sense to me. Things that seem like plot holes, but maybe I just don't have a fundamental understanding of specifically like therapy at the time and what that entailed in psychiatry. Because Michael Caine's character, he has a fucking office where he has patients, but is also like a partially infirmed patient. Him or herself?
I got confused about that too. I had to ask Bob before we started this. I was like, so wait a second. They just let Michael Caine out of his place. Now, Bob said now this is a good point, Bob. I'll let you tell it. I was confused too, Randy. I was confused about the same thing.
Tell us the tale, Bob.
I don't know what point you want me to tell.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was Alice. So somebody was telling me that, they do have a line where they say that is where Bobby went. So at this point, we're under the impression that Bobby was at one point Michael Caine's patient. And he rejected the operation, and so Bobby went to this other place. Is not actually there, like held there, but is there to see the doctor.
It's there. Yeah, she got a psychiatrist. She's seeing somebody.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. I mean, I think to be fair, like if someone shows up to just see a psychiatrist and you tell them that you are like, I don't think Bobby said, I'm a psychiatrist, I'm Dr. Elliot, because even the other psychiatrist, whose name is Dr. Levy, I had to look actually, but whose name is Dr. Levy, that psychiatrist even said, I had never even seen Bobby as her masculine self before. So as far as that psychiatrist knew, like Bobby wasn't even necessarily a psychiatrist at all, wasn't even maybe the same person. Like, I don't really know. They don't explain what in-depth information was given to that other psychiatrist.
Right. That's true. Again, that might be the part that I'm missing, but it just seems weird to me that you would have somebody that has a room. It's not like this. It's not like Michael Caine walks in, and does an appointment like his own patients in this film. He comes in and stays overnight. And I feel like if you have that level of care being done for you,
did they say that?
See,
I thought so. I thought I go to Bobby. Well, I'll take you to Bobby's room. I think
I was confused about that too. Now,
maybe I'm wrong.
I think again it was Alice. Maybe explained that no, he had just called because he knew that's where the new doctor was seeing Bobby, and he said I can't reach her otherwise.
Well, she leaves Caine a voicemail saying, like, I got a new doctor, Dr. Levy. If he contacts you, make sure to tell him I'm okay. So he knows the name of the new doctor.
And so forth.
I'd never thought that Bobby stayed there overnight or anything. I thought she just went on appointments, to see her doctor. And that was
I agree.
I don't know. Maybe I misheard or something, but I was under the impression that she had her own room, and I was like, so wait, even if that's all the case, then it's like, okay, so you have a partially infirmed person practicing healthcare, and it's just kind of flying, and nobody.
Right.
I don't know. What kind of documents do you have in your wall to prove you're sane enough to do that?
No, that's fair. Have y'all seen this movie only one time then, or did you watch it more than once?
I watched it once.
Just once? Because if you watch it again, this like a second time, and I'm not suggesting that you watch it a second time, but if you were to watch it a second time, I know especially you, Randy, is that they have like nods the whole time that Dr. Elliot is Bobby. I mean, it's like from the get-go, like even like when Dr. Elliot gets a call and it's Bobby on the answer machine, and it's like, I killed them, check your razor, and like Dr. Elliot opens the drawer and the razor's gone. Then they step back and they bump into a mirror, and it's like they're scared by their own reflection. And then also at the same time, there's the mirror on the desk right before the final reveal where they keep looking at themselves, and they're like, oh, well, that's okay that and like there's so many like initial nods that they're the same person. Also, Robert Elliot and Bobby. Robert. I don't know. That one is more obvious later, maybe, but you don't recognize it at first.
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked up on that naturally. But yeah, the mirror thing is something that we had a brief discussion, like just on text in preparation for the show. the three of us. And I don't think you guys really realize that the whole thing, like with the mirror on the desk, like that was what was supposed to be Robert's wife that he's looking at when he's like, well, I have a wife, so I'm not going to have intercourse with you, ma'am. And
and he keeps looking. It's very weird.
There, and then eventually you see that that's a mirror. You guys didn't pick up on that, but that was one of the more like,
I didn't.
Oh, Jesus moments for me. I was like,
I mean, and there's also even like when he's in the police office, the policeman's office or whatever, they say, oh, there's only one witness to the murder who saw it. And then when the police officer leaves the room, he leans forward and like checks like the address for Liz. Like he literally Dr. Elliot looks at Liz's address and everything. And it's like almost unnoticeable if you're not thinking about it. But then when you rewatch, you're like, oh, like they're obviously looking at their address. Like that's so guilty of them to want to know where the witness lives. Like,
I did notice them do that, but I didn't realize like it just slipped my mind from that point on. It's one of those things.
No.
It's tracks laid that you're not really supposed to remember until it's second viewing or whatever. That's fascinating, though. The craft in this movie is so good; it makes me want to jump through so many hoops about it. But it's I was very, very bothered by some of the shit in this fucking movie. So,
are there any other major points we want to touch on before we end up rating this thing? Anybody? Bueller.
Major points.
Bueller.
The fucking NYPD Blue can suck it. Fuck you.
Yeah, we didn't even mention the cops, but yeah, the cops are pretty shitty in this movie.
So yeah, that's about it. I don't know. I think we kind of covered everything. The biggest thing is like the thing, and then everything else kind of is almost set dressing for this problematic core.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and do it. Let's rate this movie. 10. Typically, we give it a somewhere between a 0 and a 5. So whatever you think this film warrants it. Juice, why don't you do us the honors and kick us off? How do you feel about Dress to Kill?
Okay. So yeah, going back and forth between some of the positives and negatives. I did like a lot of the cinematography. That opening scene in the museum was great. I love a lot of the soundtrack through this film, how it built tension. I liked, for a change, that I got to spend time with this woman, with her son, and she just seems so genuine that I like when even she finds out that maybe she has, gonorrhea, chlamydia, whatever. I felt for her. I was like, man, I know what this woman, she's got real struggles.
I know what that's like.
Well, no, oh shit, you're in.
Been there.
No.
Meet Soju at Spooky Empire May 1st.
But I don't know. It made the character feel really grounded. And so for her to go. For her to be murdered was a surprise for me, and I felt it a little bit more because it wasn't like super brutal. It was, but I had more weight to it because I had spent some real genuine time with her, and I thought that time was done well. There was one scene talking about the cinematography. I liked a lot of the cinematography, but Tin, you had mentioned before, I did really like the scene where it did the double flash with the cab, because at that point there was no dialogue and it was still driven by a lot of the music. But they do another one of those scenes where it's Michal Cain and Liz in their apartments, and at both times they're like talking. It's
multiple. I love that scene.
Yeah, I found it very distracting. I was like, wait a second, why can't focus on what's happening? Mostly because of the sound. I was just like too overwhelmed. I was like, when it's just, there's no dialogue going on, it's a really cool effect, but the two sounds were really throwing me off. So I had a hard time with that. Overall, it was fine. There's a lot of stupid choices that didn't serve the story and made the overall film very problematic. That the last dinner scene, even just from a story standpoint, it was just like, why isn't this film done? That's the scene I think that happens after the shooting. I was just like, what? Like, why isn't this film done? So it wasn't even necessary, and it was problematic. Same thing kind of with the setup with the guys in the subway. I was just like, this doesn't make a lick of sense, and there's no reason for it. And so I think it was like a double whammy, because I was like, damn, you're fucking up the craft and you're just making this way more problematic than it needs to be. I mean, there's already other problems, but these things are just foolish, like, to include. So that definitely affected me. The acting was good. I thought everybody, for the most part, like, did a good to solid job. A lot of shots were cool. Again, it's not really even my bag from the time. If it weren't so problematic, I would say, like, it's kind of like a mediocre film of its time, but then it kind of gets dragged down a bit. So I think overall, I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5. It had, like, good craft, good acting, okay as a horror film, and then some serious problematic spots.
All right, 10. Why don't you go next? Out of 5, how you feel?
So I knew you were going to ask me this because I listened to your podcast before coming onto the podcast.
Like a professional.
I know.
Unlike
yeah.
me.
Wow. I only listened to half. I'm just kidding. So
It was so garbage, I couldn't make it through.
I just could not. No. By the way, Godzilla vs. Kong was good, and y'all were hating a little too much. Anyway.
Hey, I love the backup.
So back to this film, though. I knew you were going to ask me, and I knew I was going to struggle with it because I have seen it so many times, and I still to this day have never even rated it on my letterbox or anything. Like, I always hesitate on rating it because I have mixed feelings about it so much. I want to talk about a few things I like really quick. I know I mentioned these before. I do think the cinematography is beautiful. I think there are so many really cool, intriguing shots. I like the nods to the ending that show up like earlier in the film on rewatches. I really love that Liz Blake, a sex worker, survives at the end of the film. I think that's fantastic. I'm trying to think of other films where sex workers actually live or like are having like fulfilled lives, and like there aren't many that come to mind. Oh, there's a few. So I guess I could think of a few, but you know what I mean. So that's a very common trope that I see. So I did like that. I think I've talked about almost everything I really wanted to say on this film, but at the same time, I could talk about it for another hour. For me, I think I'm going to have to go with 3 stars. And the reason I want to go with 3 stars is because despite its problematic nature, and despite like it being, as my friend described to me yesterday, a hard or a tough watch on some trans people, I think that it brings enough to the table of the things that I like stylistically in film, which is just that very 70s, like Italian, very like original, like cinematography, very like specific, mirror shots of the killer and upside down weird like shots in elevators, and like that whole aspect of the film is really carrying probably 2.5 of those 3 stars for me, honestly. So I'm gonna give it 3, but that's a trans person rating. To cis people, I'll say 2.5.
I don't know which one to use for the aggregate.
Okay. You can say 3. You can say 3.
I'll go with the 3 then. Cool. I'll jump in here very quickly.
Bomb!
Yo!
Dress to Kill, out of 5, what you got?
So the craft of this movie is spectacular. I think we've covered that ad nauseum. I love the look of the movie, cinematography, the lighting, the choreography, the acting. It's all done very, very well. But a lot of the plot points are just kind of cribbed from movies that came before it and may or may not have been done better. It's all up to a matter of opinion. Pulls a lot from Psycho, pulls a lot from Argento Giallo movies from Italy. So it's like he's standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. He's very talented in and of himself, Brian De Palma, that is, as a director. But he's definitely cribbing off a lot of stuff that came before it and was very successful before it. So I don't know. I might just prefer to watch those earlier movies than this because the plot of this really doesn't satisfy me in any way, really. But stylistically and technically, this movie is super, super entertaining. Because of that technical aspect, I'm going to give it a 2.5. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got to add. Randy, how do you feel out of 5?
So let me start by echoing something Tim said, which was about Liz being a working girl in this movie and not just surviving, but also being this is another reason that I kind of felt like maybe this movie's kind of woke a little bit, because she is a high-end call girl making money and trading stocks and shit and just kind of doing her thing. And she sometimes, she says, I sometimes like to sleep with men, or sleep with whoever's hiring me. And, she, there's stigmas at this time, certainly, and still today, stigmas against sex work. So, I mean, for that, I was like, what is De Palma going for here? And by the end, I feel like he had NYPD Blue just shit all over that a little bit. And there's a scene where he's like, yeah, I had this planned all the time. I knew you'd step up and do the blah, 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 and all that shit. And I just I don't know. But up until that point, I was like, man, Liz is an interesting fucking character, to an interesting take on a working girl for this time and place, to not just be a survivor of this situation, but also be more or less the main protagonist, with the exception of maybe Peter. So I don't know. I was pretty enthralled by that for the time. Anyway, but to get back to the movie overall, we talked about the craft quite a bit. The acting in this movie is so good. Angie Dickinson is this is, I'll legit say this is a movie that if it didn't leave such a bad taste in my mouth for all of its transphobia and racism and all that stuff, it would be a much, much higher rating for me, a significantly higher rating, because I love a lot of things about this movie. It's, like I said, I'm of two minds about this, which is, of course, appropriate for this goddamn movie. I want to say that, the things I like about this movie are counterbalancing really awful shit, but you really can't say that. I certainly can't say that from where I'm at. So I can't, there's no counterbalancing. There's only just tacit acceptance of what it is. And so with that in mind, I give it a 2.5. So I guess your call about cis rating was dead on the money.
So funny.
All right, 2.5 from Randy. That's going to put our aggregate at a 2.6 overall. Let's go ahead and jump into our Rotten Tomatoes segment, see what the critics and users think about Dressed to Kill.
Certified fresh to death.
All right, so this segment is the Rotten Tomatoes segment for newbies. What's going to happen here is I'm going to have these folks guess, within the best of their ability, the aggregate scores of both critics and users on RottenTomatoes.com. We're going to start with our critics score here, and it is an aggregate of 51 reviews. 51 reviews. I don't know how many of them are recent versus old. You're just going to have to take a stab at it. So,
pun intended.
Let's start with Soju. What do you think for the critics score?
I think it's probably going to be slightly higher than the Straight Chillin' Crew's 52 overall percent. So I'll bump it up a scotch and say 63.
63%. I like that we're not going with the round numbers so much anymore.
Yeah. Makes it interesting.
All right.
Makes it harder for Randy.
It does, yeah.
I don't do split focus very well. It's amazing that I like De Palma at all. Anyway, so let's go with 10. 10, what do you think the 51 critics aggregate would be?
I'm just going to go out and just say 68%.
68%.
Yeah, I don't know. Right. Just feels right.
Yeah. All right. And Bob, you're last. Let's do this.
I feel like De Palma is somewhat of a critical darling, so I'm going to go on the higher end with a 75, please.
75. Well, that instinct serves you well. It's actually an 80%.
Oh my
80%
gosh.
certified fresh. The critics' consensus reads as follows: with arresting visuals and an engrossingly lurid mystery, Dressed to Kill stylishly encapsulates writer-director Brian De Palma's signature strengths. That is quite the.
I wonder how many of those. I wonder how many of those critic reviews were trans people.
I'm guessing not too many. I'm looking down at some of the critics now. I usually read one of the negative reviews blindly because they're usually funnier, even if they're shitty. Okay, well, here's one from Transgender Tapestry, somebody who writes for Transgender Tapestry. From my point of view, Dressed to Kill is not only a generally pernicious film, it is also a film which presents a serious threat to an already misunderstood minority. Not funny. Pretty apt.
Not funny.
Yeah. De Palma, Roger Ebert says, this is not negative, De Palma is not yet an artist of Hitchcock's stature, but he does earn the right to a comparison.
When did he say that?
This it doesn't actually say the. Oh no, it does say the date. It says 2004. That can't be right.
That sounds wrong because he would have. I imagine would have said it at the time. Because now, I mean, he is fairly comparable. Like when you look back at film, but like I wouldn't say in 1980 he was.
Yeah, I agree with that. It says he gave it 3 stars out of 4. Ebert did. So yeah, there you go.
Hey, Bob.
Yo.
Hell yeah.
Very important that we get those hell yeets this time.
That's not what I want.
All right, let's move on to our user score here. I'm trying to get to the segment here. 10,000 plus audience ratings, so substantially more. We're going to go in reverse order here. Bob, why don't you start us off this time?
I'm going to go more middling with the audience. Right down the middle. Just give me a 50%, please.
50 percentile. Okay. And 10, how about you?
I'm going to say 68% again. I don't know why I have that number in my head, so I'm saying it again.
Maybe it's like you have a sixth sense about room temperature or something.
That must be what it is in here, yeah.
Soju, how about you?
I'll take the high end and go 75.
You said 75?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the 75 is going to take it again. This is 74% positive ratings. 74%. Okay. It's certified in all levels, it seems like. So, hey.
Can I get it?
We are not.
Hell yeah.
No. I didn't want it. I'm not giving it.
Okay. All right.
Well, that's our Rotten Tomatoes segment. There's not much more to say. I don't think that we're of the people this week, and I'm pretty comfortable with that.
True that. Juice, did you have any trivia you wanted to mention?
There's a Scotch trivia, yeah.
Okay. It's totally time for trivia.
It's totally time for trivia.
So not all of these can be games. Actually, maybe only one of them. So I'll kick it off with that. The exterior of the museum scenes were shot in New York City. However, the interior was shot at another prominent city's museum of art. Can you guess what city that is? Does anybody know
I bet I could.
Oh, Randy, do you know?
No, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to tell you this. I had a strong guess, and I had to try and look it up. I didn't know that the interior was different than New York, though, so that's news to me.
All right, I'll let you go last.
I'll go last.
10 guess first. 10, can you guess what prominent city in the U.S. Was kind of substituted out instead of New York City for the interior of this?
Chicago.
Chicago, Robert. What do you think?
Exactly what I was going to say.
Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay, we got 2 Chicagos.
Now you're fucked.
Randy?
No other cities. I was going to say, I immediately thought it was going to be the National Gallery here in D.C.
Okay. So 2 Chicago's D.C. Everybody's wrong. It was Philadelphia Museum of Art. Shot in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Yep.
That's bad because I've been there.
Yeah.
I've literally been there, so I should have somehow known or something.
Well, obviously galleries are not always as distinct as we want them to be, because I just completely mistook it for an entirely different place. I thought this for sure this was DC, but no.
Angie Dickinson said the scene where her character was seduced in the back of a taxi cab was filmed on location in New York City, where several gawkers observed the scene and shouted, "Right on, policewoman," referring to her previous television role. I don't know what that is. All right. Right on. So we brought this up a couple times, and there was this piece of trivia about it, so I'll go ahead and read it. This can be seen as an inversion of the Psycho formula. In Psycho 1960, an introverted young man and his mother are the villains. The psychiatrist is the good guy who comes in at the end to solve the crime and explain Norman's devious serial killing to everybody. In this movie, the psychiatrist and the villain, pretty much just everything is flipped around. So, the introverted young man and his mother are the good guys in this version. So.
And that's also true. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know if I necessarily agree with every bit of that. Not like which people are maybe the villains in the story, but I hear what you're saying. Like traditionally, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you're comparing this directly to Psycho, I would say that and I think I saw this somewhere because I did the unthinkable and did a bare minimum of research for this particular episode. So I read a couple articles, and there somebody compared Liz to Marion Crane's sister, whatever her name is, and she's like the good sister who's very chaste and all those things. She's not the one that's the hussy going to a lurid hotel in the middle of the day and all this stuff.
Stolen money.
Her sister, yeah. So but Liz, on the other hand, is a very sexually free working girl doing her thing. And actually uses it to her advantage, and is pretty capable in general, but not in the same ways. Just to lend credence to that, maybe just being like some subversion happening between that, because this movie is so very close to Hitchcock in so many ways, so very close to Psycho in particular, all the way down to like the Marion Crane murder being like a into the first act event.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I don't know.
Just one more. It just says Nancy Allen, who plays Liz Blake, was one of the reigning screen queens of the era. She starred in Carrie, Dressed to Kill, and Blowout. That's all the trivia. I know we're got time issues, so that's what's trivia.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you, Juice. And now it is time that we talk Cooter of the Week.
Let's go hunting.
Straight chillin'. Cooter of the Week.
10 looks very thrown by that bump.
as is intended, really, but appropriate reaction for sure. Juice, please tell us, what is a Cooter and why are we hunting them?
A Cooter is a character type and a straight chillin' exclusive. Cooter must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered a Cooter, and we want the character with the most points. So the 5 points are manipulation, smug arrogance, sexual deviance, overall look and attire, and overall patheticness. And I would like to put one of these characters forward to be considered for Cooter of the Week, and that would be Detective Marino. So I think his first point, smug arrogance.
Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah.
Smug arrogance out the ass. Even the way he threatens this poor girl, and even at the end he's like, no, you didn't do it. It's like, well, motherfucker, you could have not threatened to throw me in jail and put me in dangerous ass situations for your benefit.
I almost got fucking shot by your partner, but congrats on your solve.
Yeah. So a very Cooter move on the
and that leads to manipulation. Yeah, for sure.
Wait, didn't I? Oh no, I said smug arrogance.
No, you started with arrogance. They tie in together so frequently.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking. Sure. Yeah. I guess I guess the smug arrogance is more how he throws his weight around as a cop. Like, I'm gonna throw you like a jail, but then he's pulling the strings, I guess. From a manipulative standpoint. Yeah, that's pretty fucked up.
I feel like that's the true Cooter. I think from the writing of this movie, it's trying to make it our villain, which is Bobby. Yeah. But I don't feel right. That feels fucking icky as shit to pin this on her.
I don't even think
it's really a writer, the writer's fault that that's the case.
Well, and again, the Cooter's not always the villain. Most of the times, especially in terms of this era, it's the person who stands off where you're like, ugh, I don't want to meet that person on the street. Who catcalling, or I don't know, just oh, the Cooter.
He's the Oren Scrivello of the crew, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I think Marino hits on smug arrogance, manipulation for sure. sure. Does anybody have any other strong points that maybe?
I mean, looking attire, but it's very 70s and it's hard to gauge. But
yeah,
it's like the gold chains, man. Oof, the gold chains and low open shirt. I don't know, man. That's I don't know. That's Coke Fingers territory.
As a police officer, he's pathetic in any way. Does he do anything?
Yeah, he's pathetic because he does fucking jack shit, and he makes this fucking lady do all of his work for him because he's just doesn't want to do paperwork. What a fucking asshole this guy is.
It's definitely pathetic that he's a police officer.
True. It's pathetic in the way that he treats everybody around him. Like, it's zero respect for anybody that he comes in contact with at all throughout this movie.
Yeah, even like
shits on everybody.
Piece of shit. Yeah.
Dr. Elliott's like, I can't give away my patient's information. Like, okay, doctor, we're both just really doing our job.
Yeah.
You sound like a rejected Raphael voice impersonator for fucking Ninja Turtles or some shit. You do not sound like a person.
So I thought old Marino hit pretty good for this film.
Yeah, it's a pretty shallow field of characters to begin with, and I think that's
not
fair.
that many.
Yeah. All right.
That works for me. Book them as far as I'm concerned.
Solid.
Book 'em, boys.
We got him. Detective Marino. Booked. What do we got? You want to jump into the old hotline? Hotline Scream?
Yeah, we might as well.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Hotline.
If you are listening and would like to call in and leave a voicemail to be featured on our next show, hit us up at 904-638-3231. We have 2 voicemails this week. First up, we're going to hear from Kelvin, who chose the movie we're talking about tonight. But this is a holdover from last week, so I don't believe he really gets into the movie. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hear what Kelvin has to say.
What's up, guys? It's your boy Kelvin calling in again. I love Soju's total annihilation of Blood Diner last episode. It's always great to hear Rob defend a film that's barely palatable. Whatever Randy did with that long-ass bump near the end of the show had me dying just as much as the entire crew. I would love to hear more context on that bump. Since Rob doesn't have a call tag like Randy with yibbity yabbity, or Soju with hell yeah, in an attempt to restore some normalcy on Rob's behalf. This one is for you, King. I have a daddy kink. Feel free to crucify me eternally in Rob's name. Keep chilling, fellas. Peace.
What bump is he talking about?
I will happily take that as my calling card, the daddy kink. Let's go and wear that one out.
Yeah, that sounds out of context. That's like the ramblings of a mental patient. So thanks, Kelvin. We appreciate that.
I have no context.
We have stupid catchphrases that we say, and somehow or another, me saying I have a daddy kink has been assigned to me as a catchphrase, and that's fine. I'm going to lean into it.
Perfect.
There's a lot of removing people saying things from their original context on this show.
And used against them. Which we do, the three of us do that amongst ourselves, to be perfectly clear. We don't do that to anybody else. The bump that Kelvin's talking about, Randy, you had some sort of bizarre malfunction a couple episodes ago where there was a tutorial that you were watching.
Oh, that was not a bump.
Right, yeah, it was an accident.
A YouTube tutorial I had been watching just played, and my sound cut out completely. And that's the context that you're missing. It's literally not supposed to have happened, and I asked for it to be removed, and it was not. Yeah.
I thought it was so funny. I couldn't cut it out. Couldn't do it.
Well, whatever. If we get sued, bro, it's your ass. Sued from the YouTube tutorial.
Really hard.
Courts.
My ass. It's my ass. Thanks for calling in, Kelvin. Thanks for picking the movie. Next up, we're going to hear from Cole. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hey guys, it's Cole calling. Just calling about the prompt of the week. What's your comfort movie? No one ever said it had to be horror, but at the same time I feel guilty not being a horror movie, but mine's Rock.
Usually the first one or the sixth one, but they're pretty much all perfect, except for maybe 5. But yeah, there was a couple years in my life where I watched one of the Rocky movies basically every night. But I had a question for you guys. Well, actually, for Randy Gandy. It's I guess this would be a hotline kink directed towards you guys, but Bob's got his daddy kink, and Juice is a masochist. So I was wondering, what gets you off, Randy? If you guys could let us know, that'd be great. Thanks. Keep chilling. Bye.
I love I've been assigned the masochist.
Of course.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's an established joke, but okay.
Randy, what gets you off? We gotta know.
I guess if gun to my head, I'd have to say an air of mystery is what gets me off. Really, really get off on other people not knowing about things I think.
The man
So,
mystery.
it should be very evident by the amount that I fucking speak. But yeah, I love an air of mystery. I'm
the masochist kink.
Nobody's hotter than Austin Powers to me. He's an international man of mystery. I love it. Yeah.
I like all of those. I'm in on all of them. I'm all in. Let's go.
Hell yeah.
Was that Cole, our new Patreon supporter?
I think so. Yeah.
One and the same.
Same Cole.
Cole. Thanks for supporting. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah. Good to hear
Thanks
from
for
you.
Also,
Be a
Rocky.
masochist
You did say Rocky. Right? They're all the Rocky films are perfect, and I feel that that's a questionable stance.
Bold.
I have not seen all of them, but I have seen in the dead of night one of the middle entries of that series, and they have a fucking butler robot like Rosie the goddamn robot in one of those movies.
It's the best
So
one.
I can't imagine it being perfect as a franchise. Maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong, Cole.
It is. I've never seen a
Yeah.
Rocky movie, actually, so I can't speak to it. Gotta catch
We're doing
up.
the city of Philadelphia no
blasphemy.
favors this week.
Gotta catch up. Again, if you guys are listening and want to call and leave a voicemail for next week's show, hit us up at 904-638-3231. Do you guys have any prompts to pose for next week?
I don't
know,
think
man.
so. We're covering actually, yeah, since we're covering it next week, we're covering Brendan Fraser's The Mummy from the 90s.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh, boy.
and before I was blocked from picking this for a poll pick, so I want to know what movie do you think fits in the realm of genre, or what movie do you think fits in the horror realm of genre in your mind that most people exclude, like often, like
Are you talking about like Ghost, or is this another way of saying fucking
Like
Patrick
Ghost.
Swayze
Oh,
making
gosh.
pottery?
Well, it popped up on the Slack earlier. People were talking about like thrillers, like what, and they
Yeah.
were talking about Seven,
The
and they
Line.
were talking about a couple different movies. So I thought that might be appropriate, especially given next week's episode. So, what movie do you typically kind of lump in like the horror realm to you, but then you found out later that people are like, "That's not a horror movie" or something like that?
Normies,
what's weird?
Normies say that, not horror fans.
Yeah,
That's not
that's what I was
horror.
gonna say. Is like there's like the examples I would give like are like The Witch, because I've had direct conversations with people trying to tell me that that's not a horror movie.
Yeah,
and
you
it
can
drives
do that
me
too.
fucking insane.
Or maybe like, what's the strangest time you heard somebody say that's not a horror movie, and you're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
That's the Die Hard is a Christmas movie of horror takes, as far as
Oh
I'm
yeah.
concerned.
Well, Get Out won Best Comedy, so that's my opinion on that.
Best.
There you go. Perfect.
The Oscars are the fucking joke. That's best
Dude.
comedy goes to the Oscars.
I don't think I realized that. Jesus.
I'm pretty sure. I think that they won.
wild.
It was like I forget the name of the award, but I think it was like an amalgamation, like comedy, sci-fi, or something. Like it was like a
It was very.
Genre
blanket
film or
award.
something.
Very
Yeah, maybe
questionable.
best genre.
Right.
Fucking Oscars are weird as shit. Just give me the On Cinema Oscar special every time.
Yeah,
All right. That's my prompt.
just watch the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. Like the beanie tin, by the way. Digging the
Thank
beanie.
you.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us this week at Straight Chilling. Again, thanks so much for sitting in with us, Tin. It was really great having you on.
Yeah.
Again, would you like to remind everybody where they can find your writings, your book, your music, whatever, anything you want to plug? Just let people know where to find you.
Okay, yeah. So I am on Twitter at BlueIris04. I'm also on Instagram at that same name. I have a Patreon under my name that links in all my social media, so you can find that anywhere on there. I'm currently working on a book called Transploitation with my amazing partner, Ren Crane. And we also have a whole team of writers that are doing essays in that book from just different perspectives about different films. I'm super, super excited about that. A lot of news coming up with that soon. You can follow that on Twitter at TransploitBook. I also do make music under a lot of different synonyms and names, but most of that's going to be linked all on my social media. So that's the best place to find my stuff right now.
Fantastic. Thanks again for sitting in with us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Next week, slam your eyeballs into The Mummy from 1999, as was chosen by Alice. Thank you, Alice. But until next week, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. You can hit us up on Twitter at str8_chilling, on Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. You can send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. And as always, until next time, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.